Okay. I definitely forgot to start recording, but that's okay because we just went over to the schedule, which is already on D2L anyways. Okay. So I'm going to pull up the Grounds for Justice article that we are reading. So like I said, there's a lot of info in here that I will try to tell you as I read what's important, what you'll see on your test. Oh, I'll try not to yawn so much. But I did not sleep well last night, guys. I had bad dreams, so I'm tired. But I'm gonna read this. Annotate. Make sure if you have it printed, awesome. If you don't, you can annotate on Adobe. So if you opened it on Adobe, like I have it open here, you can highlight text, right? So like you can just like you can use the highlighter. And you can also like put it in a text box, or like you can use a pen. Right? You can say add your signature initials. You can type in here if you want, right? So you can do basically everything you would do by hand. Oh my gosh. On Adobe. Like so. I'm going to get rid of the highlighter though, because I don't need to highlight it. So if you're open, like I said, on Adobe Acrobat Reader, then I want you to highlight stuff, just use the highlight feature. Oh gosh. Okay. Grounds for Justice. Molly, what's it saying when you try to open it on your computer? Is it showing like Adley, was that to the PDF failing to load? Was that when you were trying to open the preferential option for the poor handout, or was that when you're trying to open Grounds for Justice? Knox, stop. A gray screen. Interesting. What if you right click it and open it in a new tab? Try that. Oh, interesting. Give me a second. If you go under content, guys. If it will load. Oops. Call to action. I will make this visible. I'm going to hide these because we're not doing them today. So you should be able to click on it under day 2, under content in our unit, like call to action, and you can read it from here. But you can also download it from here, right? So you can do download, and it will download for you. Like it's going to automatically open for me, but right here. I do have a million tabs open. I'm sorry. Does that give you anxiety? Okay. Adley, did you get it? Did you open it in the content section? And then you can download it from there? Okay, perfect. I'm going to keep it open here just because it's bigger. And I'm going to read it I'm reading it by hand, like I have a paper copy. So I'm going to try my best to remember to scroll down for those who maybe can't open it yet and want to follow along. Okay. So understanding the roots of the notion of justice can help clarify why justice is so important to the Christian vision of morality. So remember, morality meaning right from wrong. So valuable in God's eyes. We want to be loved for who we are, not for what we do. So we want others to recognize our inherent value. The desire to be loved in this way touches upon a biblical insight that is at the heart of moral behavior. So make sure you highlight that. All of God's creation is good and therefore has worth. Maybe I'll just do this. Let's see. Oh, look at that. It looks beautiful. So all of God's creation is good and therefore has worth. The demands of justice spring primarily from this insight. Right? We talked about human dignity and how no human being should have their dignity compromised just because of, certain circumstances in their lives. So value restricted to usefulness leads to all sorts of abusive situations and injustices. So the illegal killing of elephants in Africa for the sole purpose of obtaining their tusks for ivory is one consequence of this narrow idea of the value. Similarly, aborting unborn children who have Down syndrome is often defended with the claim that such children are a burden to families and to society, that they are not useful contributors. So we're just trying to think of where does our value come from? And it's definitely not from our use. Christian belief, however, affirms that human persons and indeed all living things are valuable in God's eyes by the very fact that they are creatures of God. So we knew this already. We know that from the second you're conceived, you have value just because you're being born into a human family. Their worth comes from within, not from someone else who judges them to be employable or enjoyable. The task of justice is to make sure this dignity is not violated. So remember, we're on the topic of human dignity again. So I'm going to highlight. Oh, that was horrible. There. So a matter of rights and obligations. The concept of rights flows from this inherent God-given dignity. So rights are those things, I'll roll up here, that we must have if we are to actually be what God created us to be. Rights are what are needed for basic well-being, and this applies to all of creation, not just human beings, right? Animals have rights, and we need to speak up for basically we need to be the voice for the voiceless. So think about animals can't speak up for themselves. If they're being treated poorly or if they are neglected, they can't do anything about it. They have no power to do anything about it, but they still have rights, as a creature from God. So we need to, to stand up for creatures or for people also that can't stand up for themselves. Thus, justice is a matter of fulfilling the rights of both human and non-human creation. I wonder if I could change the color of this highlighter. Probably not. Haley's probably having a fit. She loves all her colorful highlighters. Basic rights and well-being, a case in point. So the situation of Laura can give us some idea of what it's like to be deprived of not only a home, but of the right to good education. So at the time she was interviewed, Laura was staying with her 4 children in one room of a dilapidated, frightening welfare hotel for homeless people in Manhattan. So writer and social justice advocate Jonathan Kozol describes his encounter with her. So this is an actual interview with a woman. So try and empathize with her, try and put yourself in her shoes in this moment and feel what she might have been feeling. So the woman is so fragile that I find it hard to start a conversation. Before I do, she asks if I will read to her a letter from the hospital. Her oldest son has been ill for several weeks. He was tested in November for lead poisoning. The letter tells her that her child has a dangerous lead level. She's told to bring him back for treatment. She received a letter some weeks ago she received this letter some weeks ago. It's been buried in a pile of other documents that she cannot understand. I cannot read, she says. I buy the New York Post to read the pictures. In the grocery store, I know what to buy because I see the pictures. If there are no pictures, I don't buy it. I want to buy pancakes. I ask the lady, where's the pancakes? And so they tell me. I know my name and I can write my name, my children's names. To read, I cannot do it. Medicines, I don't know the instructions. I can read baby books like that a little bit. If I could read, I would read newspapers. I would like to know what's going on. My son tells me I'm stupid. You can't read, you know, because he wants to read. He doesn't understand. People laugh. You feel embarrassed. On the street or in the store, she cries, there's nothing here. I sign papers. Somebody could come and take my children. I sign this, I sign that. I don't know what it says. Adoption papers, I don't know. This here paper that I got, I couldn't understand. So think about being in this woman's shoes. You have 4 children. Not only are you living in horrible conditions, you can't afford, to provide for them, but you also have a sick child. And this is in the States, mind you guys. So healthcare is not free. It's not covered. So she would have had to go get her child tested at the hospital, would have costed tons of money, like hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars. And then it says to bring him back in for treatment because he has dangerously high lead levels. Again, that's going to cost more money that she obviously does not have. And thus, she also can't read the letters they're sending her. So she can't bring him in. She doesn't know to bring him back in. Education is a human right. Lacking education, Laura is prevented from caring adequately for the well-being of her family. So you want to think about how important education is. Everybody, every human has the right to an education. I know you guys maybe take it for granted a bit. Okay, guys, also let's keep the chat for questions, please, because like I said, it's really distracting and I'm trying to look as soon as I see someone pop up so that way I can answer a question and it's not questions. Like I was saying, I feel like you guys maybe take it for granted a bit that you have the right to education. I know you guys, and rightfully so, sometimes like you find, school tedious or boring, or you feel like it's something that people are forcing you to do. But you have to understand how lucky you are to actually have access to education, because there are so many kids around the world that do not. So many people that don't get their education. For whatever reason, there might be different circumstances in their lives that they don't get their education. And there's not much that you can do anymore in life without a high school education, at least. So thinking about this woman, Laura, she didn't have her education. She lacked education. So because of that, not only is it just that, oh, she doesn't have education, she can't get a job. That's not the only thing that is, affecting her in her life. Now she can't read, so she can't care adequately for the well-being of her family because she doesn't have that education. She can't read. I hope that makes sense. So the rights of persons. So basic human rights are divided into 2 main categories. So you have survival rights. So these are the certain basic needs that must be met if a person is to survive and live a bearable existence, basically. So minimum survival needs include food, water, shelter, a means of livelihood, nurturing of the young, physical safety, and healthcare. And then you have thrival rights. So think about you can survive, but people say if you're thriving, it means you're doing very well. So, however, as Laura's experience shows us, meeting mere survival needs is not adequate for reaching one's full potential as a person. So remember, we already know what common good is, and common good is allowing everybody in a community to reach their full potential. So that's not happening here. So means of livelihood. Where did I read that? Oh, okay, right here. So a mean of livelihood just means basically the ability to live a decent life. Okay, so like you need basic things in order to survive, in order to live, and that doesn't just include nutrition and shelter and water, right? So you'll need things like clothing. You'll need, there's small things that will contribute to your means of livelihood. So making sure that you can live. But apart from just living, we have the right to thrive. So thriving is basically to do well and reach your full potential. So in addition to survival, justice is concerned with what can be called thrival. So to thrive is to grow, to become enriched, to be full of life. So education and literacy are among the requirements for human thrival, right? Because if you don't have your education, then the chances of you getting a good job are very slim. So you don't have the chance to grow and reach your full potential if you don't have the means of getting there. So along with respect, privacy, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, religious liberty, and participation in decisions that affect us. Those are all seen as thrival rights. So the rights of non-human creation. So issues of justice are not limited to relationships between human beings. So the essential goodness and value of all creation means that non-human creation has rights as well. Like we already talked about this a little bit, about how animals have rights and we need to kind of be the voice for the voiceless. Thus, human actions toward the rest of creation are a matter of justice. Concern for justice with creation, or ecological justice, which we'll touch on a little bit more later on, is relatively recent for most Christians. It involves new ways of viewing ourselves and the world in which we live. So we have obligations and relationships. The fact that all members of God's creation have rights implies an obligation on the part of human beings to respect those rights. So a person or a thing has a right to what is needed to fulfill its very nature. So to have what belongs to it, so to speak. So in the case of persons, each of us has an obligation to respect not only our neighbor's rights, but our own rights as well. When relationships include respect for rights, they function as God intended them. They make life a rich, fulfilling experience. Justice is the guardian of rights because honoring rights is essential for dignity and integrity. So if someone is being stripped of their rights or deprived of their rights, that is an attack on their human dignity, right? Because those two go hand in hand. So you got to think about it. Even like the people that we deem like the worst of the worst, like murderers and rapists that are, being charged or in jail, like they still have rights just because they're human beings and they have dignity. So no matter what, you are not stripped of your rights as a human being. Okay, so dimensions of justice. This is important. Relationships take place at several levels, and so justice also has several dimensions. The first three dimensions refer to relationships among human beings, and the last dimension to relationships between humans and the rest of creation. So make sure you have all of these highlighted. And there's another one on the next page. So we have individual justice. This is concerned with obligations between individuals, so one-to-one relationships. Social justice, which is what we've talked about a little bit already, is about obligations that that individuals and subgroups within society have towards their community or society as a whole. So it's basically the obligations that we have to society, right? So we pay taxes. You know what I mean? We contribute to society. We work jobs. Whereas distributive justice deals with the obligations that society has towards its members and the role of governments, corporations, we'll scroll down here, communities, and individuals in the distribution of society's resources. So basically it has to talk about being fair with regards to society's resources, right? So one person shouldn't have more access to something in society that is deemed free than anybody else. And then next you have ecological justice. So don't forget about this one as well. This is concerned, like I said earlier, with the obligations that humans have to the rest of creation, right? So think about like the world. Like it is our obligation to take care of our environment, to care for the well-being of all God's creatures, and to respect them and respect their rights and speak up for them when they are being mistreated. Each dimension of justice expands the notion of justice to a bigger world, so that all human relationships, from the one-to-one to the global, can be seen as realms for the virtue of justice. The first three dimensions of justice, we don't need to talk about that. We're covering in the chapter because this is just about the article. So we're not reading through any of the following stories, so we don't need to worry about that. Where are we? So, okay, here we go. So although, I'm going to highlight here so that we know, because you got to keep in mind here. So although the different dimensions of justice can be distinguished from one another, all forms of justice are intertwined. So as the above diagram shows. So you can see, even though this diagram looks like it's like something from Harry Potter, you can see the different types of justice, right? So you've got distributive, individual, social, you've got ecological, and it's all connected. So you have society, creation, persons, and you can see that they're all connected, even though it's a strange diagram to understand, but they are all connected, right? You can't have one without the other, basically. So ecological justice has to do with all of creation, right? So including people, but it's all of creation. So that fits around the entire diagram. And then you've got persons and society, right? So individual justice has to do from person to person. Society, we have distributive justice, which has to do with what society basically owes to people. Look at the arrows. And then you have social justice, which has to do with what people, owe to society. So you can see you have ecological justice in all three of those areas. So I hope that this makes sense. You're going to kind of peek at the arrows and see where they're going for it to make sense. So individual justice, social justice, distributive justice, and ecological justice are fused together by a common purpose. So they are all fulfilling the great commandment of love. There you go. So originally, if we were face-to-face, I would have you guys answer these questions, but it's basically just content. So hopefully with us reading it together as a group, I've answered these questions for you and you understand them. So you know the 4 dimensions of justice that we just went over. You understand what kind of comes under survival rights versus thrival rights. And we already highlighted up top what the definition of rights is. And then we also, from the very beginning, talked about what the biblical insight demands of justice and where that comes from. So we've got everything that we need highlighted, right? So this is the biblical insight, and that it deals with that all God's creation is good and therefore has worth. So do you guys have any questions about this? So hopefully you understand and you can see all the different types of justice. You can also see how when it comes to survival rights versus thrival rights, if we are deprived of certain thrival rights, like education, then that can affect our ability to survive, and therefore it can lead to a deprivation of certain survival rights as well, like healthcare. Right, so if, like in Laura's story, the fact that she couldn't read, she was unable to care for her family properly, and so now her children are being deprived of certain survival rights because Laura was deprived of certain thrival rights. So you can see how sometimes they're connected. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions about that? No, everybody's good? I hope so. Okay, so hopefully you're able to highlight and annotate just like I did on here. Maybe I'm going to try if I save this and see if it saves with the highlighting, and then I can put it on D2L. Oh gosh. Okay. Moving on. We are going to do our note on option for the poor. So if you are writing it by hand, make sure you get your paper out. And you'll see where and what you need to write. So I want you guys to see, write in the chat, agree or disagree. So if people are poor, it's their own fault. Do you agree or disagree with that? Oh, sorry, guys. Somewhat agree, depends on the person. All right. Not always their fault. All right, there's lots of people in here, so let's hear your input. You can type it in. You don't actually have to say anything. Disagree. Agree or disagree. If people are poor, it's their own fault. Hayden agrees. Depends on the person. I feel like rather than it depends on the person, maybe it depends, exactly, Megan, on the situation. So, and Joshua, yeah, it depends on their decisions and it depends on the situation. Yes, Molly. So things like education and other circumstances can put them in a situation, right? So you got to think about it like life is like a domino game, right? So it's literally like you might see somebody and they are, maybe poor and maybe, have a substance abuse addiction or substance addiction. And you might look at them and say, like, if maybe they're homeless and they have a substance addiction, you might look at them and say, like, that's your own fault. Like, you could not do drugs and you could get a job and you could rent a place, right? So it's easy for us to look at someone like that and say that's their fault. But think about, like you said, life being like a domino effect. Think about all the situations that led them to that point in their life. Right? So they might have been a million different situations that were out of their control. So addiction is a disease. So maybe they were born, maybe they had a mother who was addicted to drugs and did drugs while they were pregnant with this person. And so right from the beginning, right from being born, they, were born with this addiction disease. And that's really hard to shake. So maybe they tried throughout their life to shake this disease and it just kept kind of cycling back and they couldn't help it. Maybe for whatever reason, they were deprived of education. There's so many different circumstances that could have happened that led this person to being where they're at. So you are all, I feel like, correct when it depends on the situation, but it's never necessarily their own fault. So agree or disagree, just write it in the chat. You can just write agree or disagree. So the poor shouldn't waste their money on things like Netflix, alcohol, or cigarettes. Do you agree or disagree with that? Lots of agreeing. Netflix is cool. Yes. Okay. Lots of agreeing. Good. What's the next point? Let's see. The more we own or make, the happier we will be. Agree or disagree? Disagree? Depends on the person. All right, interesting. Owen, you're chatting in the wrong meeting, just so you know. The next point, agree or disagree. Regardless of the job, those who work should earn a living wage, which means basically they should earn enough money to live decently comfortably. So make sure you notice that the wording, regardless of the job. So no matter what the job is, people should be able to earn a living wage. Okay, so probably lots of agreements. One disagree. All right, look at you guys. Depends on the job. So then what about this one? Agree or disagree? It is wrong for Canada to send money and aid to help the poor in other countries when we have poor among us. Agree or disagree? Do you think that it's wrong for our country to send money and, medical aid or people to other countries to help the poor when we have our own poor here? No, yeah, it's good to help everyone. Depends. Interesting. There's a big mixture for this one, whether it's agree or disagree. Nella says that we should help, our poor people first. Right. Good. Okay, so looking at this chart seems very simple. However, it's a line graph. So a lot of people contribute happiness with money. So if you don't have any money, a lot of people agree or, think that they would, you won't have any happiness. And that there's a happy medium, right? So as the money level increases, the happiness level increases. Do you guys think this is true or not? Do you think that the more money you have, the happier you truly will be? Lots of no's. Doesn't it, Vincent? Good. You guys are restoring my faith in humanity here. All right. So this line is important. So the experience of not having the basic things one needs to live a human life is called poverty. So make sure you know that that's the definition that we are working with when it comes to the definition of poverty. So poverty means the experience of not having the basic things one needs to live a human life. So the topic of poverty is a good topic to ask our guest speaker about tomorrow morning. If you're having a hard time coming up with a question for him, remember I told you, and this is what he told me, is basically like police officers, unfortunately, they send her out and target impoverished areas, impoverished people. We had a good discussion about, a lot of the issues when it comes to police officers being deemed racist. And sure, there definitely probably are people in, you know, a position of power that are racist, and that's extremely unfortunate, but that happens in every job, not just policing. However, he says, as unfortunate as it is, poverty breeds crime, and so they definitely center out impoverished areas to look for bad things, basically. And that's just the way it goes. So that might be an area that you might want to ask him about tomorrow morning. A lot of, because they do that, sometimes the police force, the police officers, can be deemed racist, but you have to look at the demographics of the city, basically, right, that they're in. So like in I don't know, say like, I have no idea. Like I don't actually know the statistics about this stuff at all. He will, I do not. But for example, maybe in Toronto, the majority population of the most impoverished areas in the city might be people of color. And that just happens to be demographics. There's nothing, you know, anybody did about that. It's not like the police officers were centering out, they're not centering out people of color, they're centering out poverty. And that just might be the majority demographic of that impoverished area. And so then they might get deemed racist because of that. However, it's not always the case. Okay, so we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you might have heard about this before, but Maslow was a psychological theorist, developmental theorist. So he came up with this. I'm sorry, guys. Can you read that? Like I just realizing the writing is pretty hard to read. Here, maybe I'll make it black. Is that better? Definitely better. So he created this hierarchy of needs. So human needs for living, basically, and surviving. Hierarchy just means like an order of importance. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a motivational theory in psychology comprising of a five-tier model. So there's 5 levels of human needs. They're often depicted as hierarchical levels within a pyramid. So you'll see, I believe it's on the next slide, a picture of what this pyramid looks like that I'm going to have you guys draw. Is it? Interesting. From the bottom of the hierarchy upwards, so starting from the bottom and working your way up, the needs go as follows. So there's different categories. So you have physiological needs on the very bottom, which is like food, clothing, you know, shelter. So like your basic survival needs. And then the next tier up is safety. So that would be a job or job security. The next tier up, the category is love and belonging needs. That might be friendship, family. And the next is esteem and self-actualization. So self-actualization basically just means to reach your full potential and the ability to do that. So the needs lower down in the hierarchy, so the needs at the bottom of the pyramid, in the very bottom, they must be satisfied before individuals can attend to needs higher up. So if we don't have food, clothing, shelter, if we don't have those needs met, then we can't have job security. Like we can't have a job probably, or job security. So the chances of you having those safety needs met without having your physiological needs met are very, very slim. I'm going to give you guys a minute because I'm assuming some people are writing by hand and this slide's a little bit word dense. if you're writing it by hand, and you are good to move on, just write in the chat, like give me a thumbs up or something. I'll give you guys a minute. All right, think we're good? Yeah, everyone writing it by hand, good to move on. Like I said, like this stuff is always on D2L2, so if there's for a reason I go too fast and you miss a slide, you can go back on it on your own. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to get rid of this. I don't understand. So how to move this. But hang on, give me a second. Maybe. There we go. Let me try and get rid of this thing. I don't understand. Is it there yet? Let me unpin it. I'm so frustrated. Oh, it's gone. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, so this is one more just explaining the different types of needs. So it is again like a little bit word dense. So I apologize. But we are grouping into deficiency needs versus growth needs. So the 5-stage model can be divided into these 2 different types of needs. Every person is capable of moving up the hierarchy toward a level of self-actualization. So remember, self-actualization just means to reach your full potential as a person. So everybody's level of self-actualization is going to be different. So someone might strive to become a millionaire, and that could be the level of self-actualization for them that they are trying to reach. That would be like reaching their full potential, right? It's once they become a millionaire, they have reached that level of self-actualization. Maybe your self-actualization level, like your full potential, is to become a mom. Like maybe that's just like your inherent need is to become a mom, you know, as a woman, and that might be your level of self-actualization. So there's different, everybody's level of self-actualization is going to be totally different. So unfortunately, progress is often disrupted by a failure to meet the lower level needs. So like I said, and you can fluctuate throughout the between levels. Like you don't, like, it's not like you meet your basic needs and then it's like level up on to the next one. Like it doesn't work like a video game, right? Like you can be on the 3rd level and then lose your job, or you know, go through a divorce, or become homeless and then drop back down to the bottom level. Like, so it's not like it's not a smooth sailing, unidirectional manner. So life experiences, like I said, including divorce, maybe a loss of a job, will cause the individual to fluctuate. Therefore, not everyone is going to move through this hierarchy in a fluid motion, but they may move back and forth. It's supposed to say between, you can see, between the different types of needs. I'm going to do this so that way, when I, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. There. Now you can see it better. Sorry, my dog is sleeping so cute on the floor right now. I gotta take his picture. Ugh, so cute. All right, I will send you guys the photo I took. Look how cute he is. So you'll understand this hierarchy of needs, this pyramid on the next slide. Like I said, that you'll see what I mean. And so then it'll make sense when you see like people can fluctuate between the levels. Like I said, it doesn't move in like a very straightforward, fluid motion because life happens and life experiences happen and they can set us back. Oh, doesn't miss. I love that you have St. Bernards. They're so cute. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you are good to move on from this slide. Are most of us good to move on? Give me another minute. A couple of people that I know are raising my hand have not chimed in yet. And I want to make sure we're all good. Oh, Ryerson, I know I noticed it when I was showing everybody the schedule that it wouldn't open. I'm going to fix it after this meeting. So after this meeting, give me like 10 minutes and you'll be able to open it. Vincent, not until I literally read that in my head like you were yelling, but not until this afternoon. So I'll go over it again in this afternoon's meeting. So don't worry about it yet. Okay. So this is the pyramid. So you can see the bottom two levels. I was pointing at my screen, but I guess I could use this. Are the basic needs, and then you've got your physiological needs, or sorry, psychological needs. So this basic needs would be like physiological needs. Then you've got your your safety needs, your belongingness and love, or relationships in love. You got your esteem, and then self-actualization. So you can see, I want you guys to try and draw this pyramid out, or make sure you know this well. Okay, right, so you've got your physiological needs. Think physiological, think your body, right? So you need food, water, warmth, rest, basic necessities that everybody needs to survive, like to literally live and breathe. You've got your safety needs. That is like security, like job security, safety, maybe housing. And then you have your belongingness and love. So everybody's every human deserves and it has the right to be loved. And so that includes intimate relationships as well as friends. And then you have your esteem needs. So that is prestige and feeling of accomplishment. So you might, I don't know, you might get promoted in your job, and then you might level up to your esteem needs because you feel very accomplished. And then something happens and then you get demoted. And then that brings you down, down a level. It's like kind of like a video game. So think about it like that. Like if something goes wrong in your video game and then you go back down a level. But like I said, like you could be, well on your way to self-actualization, achieving your full potential, creative activities. Like you could be like right up almost there, and then something profound happen in your life and it brings you down, back down to your, the bottom level. Touche, Landon. So it's like I said, it's not like we move up these levels in a fluid unilateral motion. It doesn't work that way. Like we can fluctuate throughout these, and we will fluctuate throughout these for probably the majority of our entire lives. But remember, self-actualization, it's a mouthful of a word, but think about it as self-fulfillment. So it's going to be different for everybody, but it's basically just achieving your full potential. So what you deem as your full potential. I'm just going to get out of here so I can see. So we have a few more slides left, but I want to make sure I give you guys, ample time for a break and to work on stuff. So I think some of you still have your scriptural links handout to work on. So we're going to pause at this slide, and then we'll finish the last few slides at the start of our afternoon meeting. Our afternoon meeting may or may not run a little bit longer than planned, which just kind of is what it is. That being said, make sure you have this pyramid, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, written out in your notes. That way you know it. And then we'll pause here. Go finish your scriptural links handout if you haven't already. I will make sure that the preferential option for the poor handout is accessible and on D2L within the next 20 minutes. I'm just gonna have to try and tweak it and make sure that it works. And then we will reconvene at 12:20. One second. here. Download my tenants. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, so you guys are good to go, and I will see you back here in our daily meeting number 2 at 12:20, and we'll finish this note, and then we will watch our video and then read our other article. Okay, sounds good. All right. Goodbye, my friends. I will see you in an hour and 10 minutes.